Hi there guys, I am the Sixth Machine and welcome back to another Warhammer video. We've had a few more unit stat line and profile leaks for the upcoming Admech Codex, so today we're going to have a quick look at the Ironstrider Ballistarii and the Sydonian Dragoons and see what changes they look to be getting in the new Codex. So first up, the Ballistarii, which are the ranged variants of the kit. You can choose to make either this or the Dragoon melee version from the box, which is nice. But again, I just want to say before we start this, what we have from the leaks is just the unit stat line and the weapon profiles, so there is no way to know which special rules or unique abilities they may have, or what may get changed in that regard as the new codex comes out. Currently, the Ballistarii come in with a profile of Movement 10, Weapon and Ballistic Skill 3+, Strength 5, Toughness 6, 6 wounds, 2 attacks, and a 4-up save. The only thing that's changed from this is that the save has been upped to a 3-up instead of a 4-up, which is pretty nice, giving it a good bit more survivability, and I think definitely something which is much needed with the way that 9th edition has been going in terms of buffing the weapon's damage output pretty much across the board. So I'm pretty happy with that. Toughness 6 has always seemed right to me considering the look of the model, so I'm glad that that didn't change, and also the same for the wounds, but it is good that they have done something to make the model a bit more survivable on the tabletop. When it comes to the weapons, the Ballistarii could be equipped with either the twin Cognis autocannons or the twin Cognis las cannons, and both of these weapon options have had a bit of a change. The autocannons have got the same profile of strength 7, -1 AP and 2 damage, but they've now gone up to a very nice 6 shots instead of 4, which obviously is very handy for the damage output of this unit, giving you a much higher chance of getting those crucial hits and giving you a much higher maximum ceiling of damage output overall. And in my mind as well, this is quite nice because it gives a lot of credence to the idea that autocannons across the board appear to be bumping up to 3 shots instead of the 2 that they have now. We saw it with the suppressor autocannons going to 3 instead of 2, so it will be interesting to see what happens with the Astra Militarum and their many autocannons, Chaos Havocs and their autocannons, and dare I get my hopes up, Chaos Terminators with their Reaper autocannons as well. The Cognis las cannon likewise has had a relatively small but very welcome change in that whilst it has kept the 2 shots at strength 9 -3 AP, it now does the much better D3 plus 3 damage rather than the D6 that it had before. This, as I've said before, is absolutely amazing at ensuring that the damage really does go through when these kind of weapons hit home. It brings so much reliability to these kind of weapons, and especially D6 damage weapons where their swinginess was almost always the reason you didn't take it before in 8th, and I think it is genuinely one of the best changes they've made in 9th, so I'm really glad to see them rolling that kind of change out to more and more weapons across the board. It does still give you that sort of minimum and maximum range, which adds a little bit of randomness to the game, which in my opinion is always fun. A little bit of random is always fun, but the fact that you could hit with one of these 1-shot or 2-shot guns and then just roll a 1 for damage always kind of annoyed me because it was such a disappointment, it's such a letdown when you ended up doing 1 wound with such a powerful weapon. Now that it has that minimum kind of bracket, you know that bringing these guns can be worthwhile, you just need to hit, but when you do, they really do go through and they really do a good amount of damage. Interestingly, according to the datasheet, both the weapons have moved from heavy to assault as well, which in the current rules with them, they can advance and shoot with these weapons due to the Cognis part of their rule, but it gave them a -2 to their hit roll, so I'm thinking that maybe this is just smoothing out that rules interaction and that mechanic and making them assault so that they can still keep that advance and shoot and just get the -1 to hit with assault, which based on the way that 9th is as well, where you can only go to a maximum of -1 anyway, kind of makes that previous Cognis rule irrelevant. So this is another little slight change, but overall a little bit of a buff, meaning that even after advancing they're going to be hitting on 4s with these guns instead of the 5s that you would be doing currently if you're using them, which just makes them a little bit more maneuverable. And if you need to relocate them somewhere a bit further away than your movement will get you, you can advance and still shoot even with that -1. So overall, with a tiny bit more survivability, as well as some very welcome and some very useful increases to the damage output, I think the Ballistarii are in quite a good spot. The fact that they have good movement, long range shots, and can move and shoot without penalty in 9th means that they really can provide your army with some great long range firepower, as well as being able to move around to avoid scary enemy melee units so they don't get bogged down and killed. And also, the fact that they've gone to a 3-up save means that they are just that little bit more survivable against lighter firepower, things like bolters, or even if you kind of go up to things like heavy bolters, that +1 will make a bit of a difference to those as well. So it's a good mixture of giving them that extra survivability and giving them a decent chunk more damage output that I think makes these changes looking pretty good for the Ballistarii going into the Admech Codex. The Sidonian Dragoons, the melee variant, again have a similar profile, keeping the same movement, strength and toughness, and also getting that new and improved 3-up armor save, but now they also get an improvement on their attacks as well. Previously, or should I say currently, I suppose, they are 3 attacks, which is 1 more than their shooty cousins have, but now it's being bumped up to a very respectable 4 attacks each, and they do have some very nice weapons to go along with it. First of all, they have the option for a couple of ranged weapons. The Phosphor Serpenta is an 18-inch Assault 1, Strength 5, -1 AP, 1 damage gun, and this appears to be exactly the same as it is now, so there really isn't any point in dwelling on that any further. The Radium Jezzail is a weapon that they can take instead of their melee weapon, and whilst I honestly don't think it's worth it, as their melee output is pretty decent, and honestly the reason you take these Dragoons, obviously it will depend on the points cost as to whether you think the Jezzail is worth taking on a couple or you just stick to the melee version. But the Jezzail moves from Heavy 2, Strength 5, no AP and 1 damage, to Heavy 2, Strength 5, 1 damage, but now with an extra -2 AP, which isn't a bad little profile for aiming to take out lighter infantry. I just don't think that with the number of shots, it's going to be enough to make it relevant, and like I said, giving up your main melee weapon, the Taser Lance, really isn't worth it, because if you're bringing Sidonian Dragoons over the Ballistarii, it's because you want them in melee combat, and as we're about to see, the Tasers are genuinely pretty good at doing a good chunk of damage in melee. So as it stands at the moment, the Taser Lance is Strength +3, -1 AP, and 2 damage, and it scores 2 additional hits for every 6 to hit. Now, based on the links, it's retained that +3 strength, which pushes Dragoons to an incredible Strength 8, which is a really nice breakpoint to have in terms of the strength of your weapons. It keeps the 2 damage, which again is great for killing Marines and, doing well in the current meta. And it's got a slight buff in that it's gone to -2 AP instead of the -1. So it really will be able to push through quite a lot of unsaved wounds, even on 3-up save models, making them drop to a 5-up. It is going to make quite a big difference going from -1 AP to -2 AP. Obviously, we don't get all of these special rules, as I said earlier, so we don't know if it has kept the exploding 6s or if that has changed in some way, but I would be very surprised if it has, or if it has changed too drastically. The exploding hit kind of thing is kind of Taser weaponry's shtick, so I will be expecting that to stay in some form, if not stay exactly the same as it is now. I imagine they'll say, unmodified 6s to hit rather than just 6s to hit like it says now, but I would be very surprised if that changed in too big a way. So you can still get a good number of extra hits or attacks when you use this weapon, meaning that even though it's only got 4 base attacks, which, as I said, has improved, it's still not, the most terrifying amount of attacks ever, but with those 4 attacks, you could be rolling a few 6s and getting up to 6 or 8 or even 10 hits if you are lucky. So you could be doing a good chunk more damage than you expect with this weapon. So there we have it. There aren't any huge sweeping changes to the weapons or the stat lines to either of these units like we've seen in some previous leaks for other armies, but the extra survivability in gaining that 3-up save, as well as really helping to make both the Ballistarii and the Dragoons much killier, both in range or in melee respectively, really does, in my opinion, bode well for the Admech Codex, and continues the trend that 9th has been showing us of GW making this edition really quite a lot killier and improving the stat line of weapons quite significantly, but also I think in them feeling a bit more comfortable in actually adjusting stat lines and adjusting profiles to make them fit better with how they want things to play. So overall, I'm pretty happy with these changes. I love the look of the Ballistarii and the Dragoons. I think they're some really cool Admech models, so it's really nice that they have got some improvements, and I do think that we are going to be seeing them on the table either as a long-range heavy firepower support or as a really fast-moving, quite devastating melee unit that can just charge up the lines and get a turn 1 or a turn 2 charge and do a load of, really strong at strength 8 2 damage melee attacks into your opponent's lines. But what do you think of these two units now? Will you be more likely to use them in your Admech forces with these changes? Or are you going to be waiting to see what other new tricks and abilities they can take advantage of in the upcoming codex? Let me know in the comments below, and as always, thank you very much for watching. Please do leave a like and subscribe if you want to see more Warhammer content from me. But until next time, I will catch you later, guys.